I'm not going to start without our master of ceremonies, but how about a quick round of applause for our amazing musicians? There he is. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Fairport Alumni Wall of Fame induction for the class of 2019. We're so honored to be here with you today to celebrate with some very special people to our Fairport family. You should know that this is the first official event in 512 since it's been redone, so that new car smell that you're picking up on, please don't spill anything. Over the last 5 years, I've had the great privilege and honor of serving as the principal of Fairport High School and speaking at this momentous event. And this year, our theme for the district is focused around mental health awareness and reminding our students that their stories matter, but they do not define their path. And your stories, that began so long ago when you walked the halls of FHS, will add to the legacy of graduates in the Alumni Wall of Fame that have gone on to accomplish great things, and we are so grateful to have you here with us today. I'm confident that your stories will serve as a model of passion, perseverance, and resilience for our students for years to come. We're so proud to call you Raiders, and thank you for being here this evening and adding your collective experiences to the ever-expanding and exceptional history of Fairport. Thank you.
I'd like to welcome everybody to the 2019 Wall of Fame induction ceremony. Thank you so much for coming out and sharing this special moment here at the school. And I'm John Davis. I'm a social studies teacher here at Fairport High School, and I'm a chairman of the Wall of Fame induction committee. The Wall of Fame was started here at Fairport High School in 1997, so we've been up and running 22 or so years. So for over 2 decades, we've been recognizing graduates of Fairport High School that have gone on to have amazing lives in whatever field of endeavor they chose. And also, in so doing, providing visual quality role models for our current Fairport High School students to let them know that as a graduate of Fairport High School, they can go on and chase their dreams and become as successful as they want to be. Yesterday, the inductees came in for a little meet and greet around noon. Some of them haven't been back in the building in, well, I won't say how many years, but it was many years since they walked the halls of Fairport High School. We had lunch. They met with their student presenters today, and I want to thank the students. You guys have totally stood up when some of these are my students that I've had either last year or this year or both, and others came highly recommended by Mr. Malaber and Mr. Sachs. I want to mention their names. They run the leadership program, and they go to Washington, D.C. So some of these kids are just getting back from Washington, and I've kind of just gotten to know them. And we're going to hear from them. So all the pressure's off the inductees today. They're being honored, and you don't have to get up and give a speech unless you want to, but you don't have to. No, you're being honored. They stayed yesterday at the school for the good old-fashioned pep assembly we have here in the gym with the entire student body, like 2,000 people in the gym, and you win for screaming loudest. Whoever screams loudest wins the event. So it's always a lot of fun, and the kids are all decked out in red, white, and blue. And we had a girl get up to start the pep assembly. This wonderful girl. She's a very gifted kid, has this beautiful voice, has a few other, limitations in her life. And she was brave enough to get up and stand in front of 2,000 people, which is not easy to do, and sing. And she just was so beautiful. Her voice came out, and she had mentioned that this was the last time she was going to be able to sing for her class, and give us all the gift of her beautiful voice. And I don't know if it was the moment or she really, the national anthem, pretty emotional song. It hit her about halfway in that she broke down, and she kind of lost it. And I wanted to really commend Brett Provenzano was at the pep assembly. And Brett, I thank you so much. Brett immediately just, you can't, this was not planned. This was a kid breaking down in front of the whole school. Brett runs out to the middle of the gym, pulls out his great big heart, and he helped this girl who was having a moment. And Bob Clark did the same. And Leanna Watt did the same. They just modeled, you guys, and again, I'm not trying to blow up your heads or anything. You modeled for every student in this building what to do when their classmate is having a moment and breaks down. You modeled for the faculty, every member of the faculty to, how we treat each other around here. You modeled the Fairport family, and it was all from your heart. So I want to commend you and thank you for that. Another thing you did, without saying a word, is you went like this, and every student in the gym, every kid and every adult finished the national anthem. And as a U.S. history teacher who loves America, that kid was breaking down crying. I'm over here like pouring a river out of my eye. I couldn't believe it. It was probably one of the most beautiful things I ever heard, to hear every kid in this building singing that. So thank you. Thank you so much. That's what we do around here. We support each other. We are so lucky to live in this district and be a part of this district. I mean, Dave Paddock used to say, Fairport's the best district in New York State. I know of no better district anywhere that I've been, and it's really not about bricks and mortar and cement. It's about the people in this building. Some of the best teachers in all of New York State are here, and they pour out love every day in their classrooms, and they're amazing. This is an amazing place. And if I sound like a cheerleader for the Fairport district, I don't really care. I'm a product of this place, and now I'm the luckiest guy in the world because I get to come in here every day and work with your kids, and it's fantastic. Now, my life wasn't always this easy. When I came into this building in 1981, as a 16-year-old kid, scared, super insecure, and Bob Clark, I want to commend you. You talk a lot about the kids that come into the building. They're not all comfortable, and we need to remind each other of that from time to time. And I identify, because I was one of those kids at 16, really awkward, skinny, geeky, nerdy. Do you guys remember the awkward years of your life? I mean, being a high school student is not easy. Am I sitting at the cool table? I'm not. But I was lucky enough in 11th grade, they hand you your sketch. Back in those days, Minerva DeLand was a 9-10 building. Maybe you guys remember that. And then I came to high school in 11th and 12th. I had gotten my schedule, and I walked into an English class, and I had a lot of really good teachers. I had Bob Shaw, a champion. I mean, he taught me what footnotes are. He helped me with the senior paper. I wouldn't have graduated if it weren't for Bob Shaw. But in 11th grade, I had this young teacher. I'll never forget him. He was real. He was the most real human being I think I had encountered at that point in my life. And he was in this building. I was so fortunate to have him because I was awkward. I wasn't having fun. I didn't enjoy, and then he made it all okay because this guy, he came into the classroom every day, and he just brought his heart with him, just like you did, Brett, at the pep assembly. He brought his heart every day to class, and for an uneasy kid, he made me feel good, and made me feel like I want to come back and listen to his stories. As classmates, we tried to get him off topic and get the teacher to tell stories, and we did. We succeeded once in a while. And from his stories about growing up on the streets in East Rochester, as one of 11 kids. And, things weren't always so easy for him, but he taught life lessons. One day he hands out The Catcher in the Rye. I'm reading The Catcher in the Rye, J.D. Salinger. And he brought life to the book, to the words. And then that was the year that, in 1981, John Lennon gets shot. It's like, oh my God, Beetle got shot. And the assassin who shot him is reading The Catcher in the Rye. So I'm like, what are we doing? You know? But he was a genius. He was such a gifted teacher. He turned it into a very memorable life lesson. And every day was a life lesson. So many years later, when I came back to Fairport High School, this is starting my 24th year as a teacher. So blessed to be able to do this and do what I love doing. But it wasn't easy, man. The first year of teaching is awkward. I am all awkward all over again, Fairport High School. And, you know, that same English teacher pulled me aside and he gave me confidence. He believed in me. And because he brought his heart to his classroom every day that I sat in, and I never forgot it. Because of him, I bring my heart in my classroom every day. And we love the kids. We love each other. This is such a great district. And by the way, my teacher is sitting here supporting me today. John Baines, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for all you did for me. Okay, stop talking, John Davis. This is not about you, but the kids. We have wonderful kids that I cannot wait to introduce to you. They worked hard, they prepared speeches, and this is such a stand-up thing for you guys to do. And our first presenter today, sorry, this is what him, it's going to get old. Zach Izzo, class of 2020. Zach's a senior here at Fairport High School. He was highly recommended by Mr. Sachs. Just got back from Washington, D.C. in a leadership trip. So, Zach, come on up, tell us about Chris.
Hi, I'm Zach. So, Mr. Albrecht is a prime candidate for Fairport's Wall of Fame. He encompasses everything it means to be a Fairport Red Raider. Mr. Albrecht graduated from Fairport in 1990 and went on to attend St. Bonaventure University for his bachelor's in education and Clarion University for his graduate school. After graduate school, he taught in West Virginia for 3 years and ended up wiring 400 computers, teaching others about the internet, which he was new to it also. Created one of the first web pages in West Virginia, as well as got everybody in the school to go from mail to email. Not a big deal, I guess. But, however, after those 3 years, he came back to Rochester, hoping for a job at Fairport. Unfortunately, Fairport was a little late with a job offer, and Mr. Albrecht accepted a job at Brockport. Northside offered him a job 2 days later, a little late. Though Mr. Albrecht would have definitely succeeded here, his career at Brockport has been tremendous. In 2018, Mr. Albrecht was named New York State Teacher of the Year, and was later inducted in the National Teachers Hall of Fame, earlier this year. Though these achievements are extremely impressive, to Mr. Albrecht, his greatest achievement is marrying his wife, Jenny, who is also a Fairport graduate from 1990, and raising 3 great kids. See, Mr. Albrecht does not care much about the awards and recognition. He cares about the community around him. He wants to make sure everyone has a chance to succeed. In fact, after being named New York State Teacher of the Year, Mr. Albrecht took the money and used it to donate 5,600 books across 76 schools. Mr. Albrecht, though, credits the way he is to the people he grew up around. Mrs. Lawson was a neighbor of Mr. Albrecht who served our nation and the woman accepted for volunteer emergency service military unit, but she also served as a parent figure to Mr. Albrecht as he grew up. Mr. Albrecht, Mr. Hunt, Mr. Albrecht's 7th grade earth science teacher from JP, is the man who sparked Mr. Albrecht's interest in science. A funny story, Mr. Hunt used to collect sand samples and would ask his students to send him samples when they were at different places. Mr. Albrecht never stopped sending the samples, and one day received an email from Mr. Hunt saying, "You know, I've been retired for 10 years now. You don't need to keep sending me sand samples." Finally, and one of the most influential people in Mr. Albrecht's life is Mr. Karg. Mr. Karg was Mr. Albrecht's 5th grade teacher from Brooks Hill and the JV baseball coach. Mr. Karg, though, always went the extra mile for Mr. Albrecht. When Mr. Albrecht was sick with pneumonia, Mr. Karg went and toured Mr. Albrecht so he wouldn't fall behind in class. When the JV team had a practice, Mr. Karg went and brought Mr. Albrecht to the practices. Mr. Albrecht later became a varsity player for the baseball team. Overall, Mr. Albrecht credits his teaching style and how he acts to Mr. Karg. He was just a nice, caring guy, and you can see that in Mr. Albrecht, a nice and caring guy. In the end, Mr. Albrecht is a Raider. He cares about the community around him. He doesn't see Fairport as a town. He sees it as a home, a place that always welcomes him with open arms, and a place that has watched him grown up. From his pizza stops at TK's to carving out his graduation class in Angel Hill, Mr. Albrecht encompasses the slogan of once a Raider, always a Raider. He has represented Fairport well and shows the kind of people Fairport produces. Though there is so much more to say about Mr. Albrecht, I cannot take up the other inductees' times, and so it is my honor to introduce to you the newest member of the Fairport Alumni Wall of Fame, Mr. Christopher Albrecht.
Zach, thank you very much. That was absolutely wonderful. My varsity baseball coach is, Coach Lanning is right here.
Great job, Zach. Thank you so much. All right, up next is Aaron Ross, senior, Fairport High School. Aaron was my student last year in United States history class. Oh my God, what a kid this is. Aaron is such a gifted, smart, funny, talented. She's a musician as well. I can't pronounce, what do you play? Bassoon. She plays the bassoon. Every assignment she would turn in, there was no more space left to write on it. They were heavy assignments, and how can I not give her extra credit for all of this hard work? She's such a hard-working girl. The word mediocrity is not part of her vocabulary or life at all. So Erin, come on up, and we welcome you.
Fairport alum, friend, brother, husband, and mentor. These are all titles that can be applied to this inductee. Mr. Art Alvitt is a 1978 graduate who calls Fairport home, and whose life has been defined by compassion, companionship, and a drive to help others. Mr. Alvitt met his future wife, Mary, in middle school and had a core group of close-knit friends with whom he still gets together today, even though he's the only one of them to still live in Fairport. In school, he played lacrosse and would continue playing the sport on a collegiate level when he went on to pursue a degree in economics at SUNY Cortland. He's now a trade show manager for Harris and Cooper Vision and has been in the trade show industry for 32 years. His work has taken him all over the world. Yet even with his traveling, he's still extremely involved in the Fairport community. He was a member of the Fairport Wall of Fame Committee for 9 years and has been a board member for the Fairport Parenting Partnership since 2005. Mr. Alvitt is also the president of the Fairport Alumni Association. He's been involved with this organization since 1995, and he's been its president since 2001. Although he is modest about his involvement, his work with the association for more than 20 years is the glue that has held the organization together and driven it for the last 2 decades. In 1998, Mr. Alvitt joined the Big Brother, Big Sister program of Greater Rochester, through which he met Mr. R.K. Allen. In this program, Mr. Alvitt was a big brother to Mr. Allen, and now, over 20 years later, the relationship has never faltered. When I talked to Mr. Alvitt, they had seen each other the day before and are proud to call each other brothers. When Mr. Allen came back to the area to teach after attending Columbia University, where he was an All-American wrestler, Mr. Allen wanted to do more for his community. Between Mr. Alvitt and Mr. Allen, the Rock E6 program was born, an organization formed in 2005 as a summer camp for youth in the city to provide them with alternate sport opportunities that they would not have otherwise and to further their education. The E6 in the name stands for Empowerment, Exercise, Education, Exposure, and Ethics, all goals of the program, which has grown to include 150 kids each year. Mr. Alvitt has been president of Rock E6 since 2005, and the passion with which he speaks of mentoring others, helping kids find out what their passions are, and to assist them with these passions is remarkable. He cares so much for the kids in the program and strives to help as many as he can to achieve what they desire. Out of this organization that Mr. Alvitt has helped to build has come a host of positives. In 2005, when the camp was started, there were no lacrosse programs for youth in the city of Rochester. However, because of the organization and the interest it helped spark in the sport, there are now modified teams, a JV team, and a varsity team in the city, along with Rocky 6, the tournament teams, and indoor sessions that Mr. Alvett helps to run. Through his actions, Art Alvett has set off a domino effect of teaching others, as through him, Mr. Allen, and Mr. London Booker, who is the first graduate of Rocky 6 program and is now its vice president, they're going into their 4th generation of mentoring. Mr. Alvett has never lost his willingness to learn, as he said that is due to these generations of teaching have allowed him to go from mentor to mentee, as he continues to learn from Mr. Allen and Mr. Booker. Overall, Mr. Alvett is an extremely dedicated and caring person. He wants to have a positive impact on as many people as he possibly can. When he retires, Mr. Alvett plans to work on Rock E6 full-time, yet another indication of his never-ending desire to help and teach others. He embodies the Fairport spirit of care and community, and so it is my honor to introduce to you the newest member of the Fairport Alumni Wall of Fame, Mr. Art Alvett.
Great job. If you want to walk around front, go ahead. Hey, Art, congratulations. Yeah. Thank you. Great job, Aaron. I forgot to mention Aaron's mother is a Fairport grad, class of 1985, and has 3 daughters that are going through, or have, one's graduated, and Aaron is going to graduate this year. Is it true your oldest daughter was the valedictorian of her class, 2017? So, amazing. Our next speaker, David, is word on the street is kind of around. I don't mean to make him nervous in any way. He came highly recommended out of Mr. Sachs's leadership class, just got back from Washington. But David, you know, people are talking, possibly, I shouldn't even bring it up. He's so incredibly gifted. I can't wait for you to meet him. David, come on up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. I'm truly honored to have the opportunity today to introduce you to Tim Fennell from the class of 1976. Mr. Fennell moved to Fairport in '68 after spending his early childhood in Schenectady. He spent his days biking on trails or in Ruff's Rectangular Garden, the name they gave to his friend's backyard where they'd play basketball after school. Farrington Park used to have the only baseball field in town, but when his father took control of Fairport Little League, baseball became an important part of his life as well. Looking back on his childhood, he is extremely thankful to have had the community support to pursue his athletic interests during his time in Fairport. After attending Martha Brown, Mr. Fennell started high school in 1973, only a year after this building opened. That year, they actually had split sessions for school days where some students would go in the morning and some in the afternoon because this new high school was still being built. Back then, there were no AP classes, and 8-pound calculators were actually the new exciting technology. One of his most memorable high school experiences happened in 1975, when the basketball team won sectionals for the first time in 20 years. With 10,000 people in attendance at the War Memorial, Mr. Fennell will never forget the game or the exciting bus ride home, where the entire way from East Rochester to Fairport, they were met with honking and beeping from cars lined up along the road, and people cheering for the new sectional champions. But of course, this is no match for his most important high school accomplishment. Mr. Fennell handcrafted the very first Egg McMuffin in Rochester when he worked at McDonald's.
Thank you.
Upon graduation, Mr. Fennell attended Lemoyne College. He continued to pursue athletics and he was on the rugby team with Governor Cuomo, whom he used to joke had the softest shorts of anyone he had ever played behind. Mr. Fennell continued to play baseball as well, and he still does to this day. It's actually his 30th year playing in an over 30 league. In college, his interest in becoming a lawyer stemmed from his desire to help people. And Lemoyne had a Jesuit-based emphasis on service, which perfectly aligned with this dream. He continued his education in Albany Law School, where he graduated in 1983. Throughout his career, Mr. Fennell has certainly achieved this goal of helping others, becoming one of the most respected civil an active leader in his church, Little League, and his college, of which he is the president of the National Alumni Association. He believes he takes after his father, who has demonstrated great leadership when he ran Little League for many years. For Mr. Fennell, his proudest accomplishment is undoubtedly his family. We'd like to give special thanks to them for all of their support, as well as to all of his teachers and coaches who have helped him along the way. He still remembers his English teacher, Mrs. Murphy, who is also in the Hall of Fame, being one of the most significant influences on him growing up. And he can't thank enough his coaches, Don Santini, Dave Lanning, and Jeff Fitch, who are all great communicators as well as great teachers. He's grateful for having such amazing support and such an amazing community to help him reach the point where he is today. When I met Mr. Fennell, I was astounded how humble he was despite all of his amazing accomplishments. And so it's my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce you the newest member of the Fairport Alumni Wall of Fame, Tim Fennell.
It's great, John. Tim, congratulations.
Great job.
David, great job. Really well done. Linda Hummel was unable to make the ceremony this year. She felt bad. She has a commitment with her son and is out of town. So we're going to try to get her here next year. All right, the next two presenters that are going, Kate was my student last year in U.S. history class. And I don't know why I struggled with this, but I had a hard time pronouncing her last name. So I just finally wound up calling her Catherine the Great, and she would giggle, and I knew it wasn't right, but she is pretty great. When you meet this girl. Marfiotti. I did it. I got it by the end of the year. And she is just a wonderful kid. She's driven, wants to pursue going to college in Pennsylvania, Mercyhurst, have I got that right? You know, as a junior, I ask the kids a lot, what do you want to do? Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? And sometimes a lot of times I get deer in the headlight. She is driven. She has got goals, and she also was on the leadership trip with her best friend. I asked her if she would do the ceremony. Now without my best friend, Mr. Davis. So Morgan Schwab, who wasn't my student, and I'm sorry, Morgan, that your name didn't get in the program. But Morgan is maybe one of the best female lacrosse players to ever walk these hallways. And she last year was on the Democratic Chronicle top 50 list of student athletes to watch. So I'm not trying to blow up your head, but she is a gifted athlete. So girls, come on up.
Hi, I'm Morgan Schwab.
And I'm Kate Marfiotti.
We are very pleased to present Charlie LaFaso tonight. Mr. LaFaso was a part of the 1974 Fairport graduating class out of Fairport High School. He was a member of the football team here and also participated in the marching band up until his junior year.
Through Fairport, his favorite teacher was Mr. Smith, who taught social studies, and his two role models were Joe Namath from the New York Giants and John Lennon. And John Lennon from the Beatles. Growing up, it became apparent to Mr. LaFaso on what was truly important in life, and Fairport aided that.
Fairport set the foundation for him and his future by allowing the proper skills to pursue his goals while also stimulating a strong motivation to chase after them. Mr. LaFaso would give advice to FHS students today that no matter how long it takes or how rigorous a process it may be, we should always do something we love, regardless of our age or obstacles that might be in front of us. In the end, it is important that we as students always follow our passion.
Mr. LaFaso strongly believes making positive changes to a community starts in home by creating a positive, nurturing, and encouraging environment. It is evident that success, as he believes, comes not only from the classroom, but by also creating this atmosphere to be a trend throughout the whole community.
Mr. LaFaso today has an impressive background being a lawyer, a certified public accountant, and an award-winning Rochester police investigator, while even teaching college courses at MCC and Ohio State. He also is in the process of earning his PhD. Although Mr. LaFaso was an average student in high school, he went on to achieve intellectual and career-related goals through much hard work. It is inspiring to see when someone like Mr. LaFaso has dedicated much time and energy to accomplish his goals.
And so it is our honor to introduce to you the newest member to the Fairport Alumni Wall of Fame, Charlie A. LaFaso.
Charlie, congratulations. Okay, our next presenter, Omar, was a student in Mr. Malaber's leadership class, and when Mike came to me, he said, you really got to talk to this student. So I looked up Omar's schedule, and he's a well-rounded kid. I found him down in woodworking shop, and he's inducting Sean McCarthy, and if I might just mention that Sean McCarthy, came into the school yesterday at 8:30 a.m. with his wife, Heather. And they spoke in many classrooms and brought in a slideshow and kind of in an impromptu way told their life story. And Omar, I'm not trying to steal your thunder, but I just wanted to thank you guys for modeling for our students like true success. And someone in high school or at the end of high school doesn't really know what they want to do, you guys are just great. So I thank you on behalf of the kids that got to meet you yesterday. Omar, come on up.
Hello, everyone. My name is Omar Al-Jandari. Our next inductee this afternoon is Mr. Sean McCarthy, a graduate from the class of 1998, who's accompanied here today by his wife, Heather, a graduate from the class of 2000, also from Fairport. Growing up in Fairport, Mr. McCarthy characterized himself as a student who lived outside the box, preferring skateboarding and listening to punk rock music over joining after-school clubs. His most memorable moments growing up in Fairport include the Cub Scouts, the homecoming bonfire, school dances, and breaking his nose on the DC trip while in a mosh pit. Well, believe me, the whole broken nose story is quite an interesting one. Another one of Mr. McCarthy's memories, Brotherhood Sisterhood Week, is much more so. Mr. McCarthy describes that week as a week of when the whole community came together to send a message of perseverance and inclusion, regardless of whatever clique or group you were in. These values that were instilled in Mr. McCarthy are still being passed on to students today and have shaped the way that he runs his company and lives his life today. After graduating from Fairport, Mr. McCarthy studied to become a social studies teacher at UB and became a student teacher. He drew this inspiration for teaching from Mr. Hargrave, who accepted Mr. McCarthy for who he was and supported him while attending FHS. While student teaching, Mr. McCarthy worked for tent and event companies on the side, which would later turn into a successful full-time career. Starting in 2007, Mr. McCarthy and his future wife, Heather, started McCarthy Tents and Events with only a van and one part-time employee. Since then, his company has grown at an astounding rate into a multi-million-dollar business by implementing innovative new ideas that have rocked the industry. McCarthy Tents and Events has provided venues for events like the Jazz Festival, the Rock Holiday Village, and even the most recent presidential inauguration. While hosting these large events, they've stayed rooted to the Fairport community by hosting local weddings and even a tent at the homecoming pep rally last night. While running McCarthy Tents and Events, Mr. McCarthy has traveled all over the country for anywhere from a few hours one day to weeks at a time. However, he says he'll always still consider Fairport his home and has started a family here with his wife and 2 daughters. Mr. McCarthy has had a profound impact on the Fairport community aside from merely setting up tents, which, to be fair, was described to me as a very time-consuming and difficult process. His company has hired a large number of Fairport grads and current students, allowing them to support their families, and he has even assisted them in starting their own companies. This is a prime example of the values instilled in him by the Fairport community of family and friendship. Taking care of one another is a crucial part of the message imparted to all of us as members, current and former members of the community. When looking back at his success, Mr. McCarthy credits it all to his wife, Heather, who has worked side by side with him as part of a tight-knit team. When asked if he had any advice for current students, Mr. McCarthy said to work hard, have accountability, and to always remember that things can change in an instant and long-term plans may not always hold. By building a multi-million-dollar company from scratch and still remaining close to the Fairport community, Mr. McCarthy has served as a model for many in Fairport and has passed on the values of hard work, friendship, family, and perseverance. And so, with that, it's my honor to introduce the newest member of the Fairport Alumni Wall of Fame, Mr. McCarthy.
That was good. Nice job on that. Congratulations. 30 seconds. Sure.
You know, the pressure was off tonight, which was disappointing for me because, I don't mind doing this. I want to thank my parents first for conceiving me and then putting up with me from about age 12 for the wild years till pretty much now, because as my dad knows, who works with me full-time, that the wild years are very much alive. I want to thank Mr. Dunn for going to the hospital with me in Washington, D.C. in 1994. That was a great night. It was a fun night. I'd like to thank Heather Sanger at the time for going on a date with me. Our first date, we went around and looked at tents that I set up that day. She went home really hungry and very confused and somehow still interested. But also a year later, when I was toying with what I was going to do with my life, she did say, why don't you start a tent company? Because I'd done it for 8 years. And I said, that's a really good idea. I'd like to thank all of my in-laws, but Jeff Sanger, who's here tonight, did give me a warehouse for free for the first year we were in business, and that made that first year possible, so thank you. Thank you, John Davis, for having us, because it was exciting. And being here yesterday, honestly, I'm happy with what I do, but at times I felt like yesterday like I missed out on something not teaching. So it was cool. It was cool to be there. I'd love to do it again, year by year. When you retire, I'll just take over. I don't want to have to go through the application. I just want to, I'll walk right in. And lastly, vote Baines and Felino. Good night.
So I kept hearing about Sean's wild mohawk in high school. So I got busy digging through some old yearbooks, and his senior picture isn't in there. But I'm going to keep looking, Sean, and we're going to uncover those. So thank you. I just want to say before I call up the last two presenters that at the conclusion of the ceremony, I'm going to ask everyone to stay for a group photo here. And then I'm inviting everybody down by the auditorium. We have a table set up with some food, meet and greet, and I can show you the new digital wall down there, which is a great addition to the school. And thank you, Bob Clark, for making that all happen. All right, our last two presenters, Sophia Cristello was my student last year in U.S. history. Very kind, sweet girl, very conscientious, really committed to doing the best she could with assignments. She's also a musician. She's a cheerleader. And I'm very lucky to have her back this year in senior politics and government class. Erin Kennelly is a very good friend of Sophia's. I have Erin in my government class this year. And if you're looking at that last name like Kennelly, boy, that's a name that has deep Fairport roots. Erin's grandfather is Vincent Kennelly, longtime mayor of Fairport Village, and Kennelly Park's named after him. So come on up, girls, and thank you.
Our last inductee this evening is Regina Young, an alumni from the Fairport High School class of 1992. Inspirational, motivational, and hardworking are just 3 words to describe this incredible woman.
Mrs. Young was born and raised in Fairport, New York, with her 2 brothers, stepbrother, and stepsister. Growing up, she was a cheerleader and loved to attend FHS sporting events with her best friends. One of her favorite activities was the Fairport vs. East Rochester Little Brown Jug football games. She even had a little brown jug of her own in her childhood home. She was a firm believer that you can do anything you set your mind to. And when people tell you that you can't do something, it's just another reminder to do it.
In the college search process, Mrs. Young visited many different schools, but the one that stuck out to her the most was Syracuse University. After she visited the campus, she only wanted to apply there, but her father told her that she needed to keep her options open. Mrs. Young was a good student, but her counselor did not believe that she would be able to get accepted to Syracuse University. Rather than letting this break her down, she used it to fuel her fire. Regina did end up getting accepted to SU and graduated with not only a mechanical engineering degree, but an economics degree as well. This is one of her proudest accomplishments, and even though that counselor didn't believe in her, that one comment was all she needed to believe in herself.
After attending Syracuse University, Mrs. Young moved to Atlanta, Georgia to become closer with her family. She started her career as an applications engineer, and 3 years out of college, she became a consulting engineer.
In 2001, Mrs. Young began working at Jordan & Scala Engineers as an entry-level designer. While working there, she went on to receive her professional engineering license in 5 states, including Texas, Georgia, Florida, North Carolina, and New York.
In 2009, Mrs. Young started her own company, Lily Young & Associates, which was a woman-owned firm. Women make up only a small percentage of employees in her field, so she decided to do something about it. Her company was a collaboration of Jordan Scala Engineers. With their headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia, Mrs. Young ran this company for 5 years before merging with Jordan Scala in 2014.
Mrs. Young worked her way up in the company. She knew exactly where she wanted to go and how to get there, and is now a senior associate, team leader of 22 engineers, and serves as one of the core members of the company's leadership team. Her team of 22 is in charge of creating the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing designs of her buildings, and as the team leader, she oversees the designs, manages the finances of the projects, and builds and maintains relationship with all of her clients. Jordan & Scala Engineers is one of the biggest consulting firms in the country, and Mrs. Young's projects at this company have included sites in Atlanta, Times Square, and the PGA headquarters in South Beach, Miami.
As a leader at this company, Mrs. Young also started a co-op program for college students interested in pursuing engineering. She is very passionate about mentoring the younger generations, especially women, entering the field. She believes that this is just as rewarding for her as it is for the students, and she truly enjoys being a mentor for them.
Mrs. Young's biggest role model growing up was her mother. She was a nurse and a full-time mom, and always managed to put her kids first no matter what. She always encouraged Mrs. Young to follow her dreams and is very supportive of her career. Her mom instilled in her the value of hard work and determination, which are 2 characteristics Mrs. Young lives by.
Mrs. Young is also a full-time mom herself and has 3 boys. Her kids are the world to her, and she would do anything. No, her kids are the world, and while she does have a very important career, she makes sure that her family comes first. When she's not in the office, she loves to watch her kids at her sporting events with her husband.
Mrs. Young truly believes that Fairport High School has played a large role in all of her success. She truly embodies all that FHS is and what we stand for here, and she is so deserving of this award. She is a true inspiration to all, and it was amazing to learn about all of her incredible achievements. And so it is my honor to introduce to you the newest member of the Fairport Alumni Hall of Fame, Regina Young.
Good job, Grace. You walk out front. Regina, congratulations. Yeah. Sure. Great job.
I'm terrible at public speaking, unlike Mr. McCarthy, but I did want to take a moment to recognize the family and friends that I have here and how important they all are to me. My father came all the way up from Georgia to watch this. So thank you, Dad and Romaine. I love you. And to my very best friends, Stephanie, Alexis, and Shay, thank you so much. And to my sister, you are wonderful, and I love you. And her lovely family, thank you guys. Love you all. I am so sorry. My husband is on FaceTime in Atlanta, Georgia right now, and honey, I couldn't have done this without you. I love you, Tyrone Young.
Well, that was pretty good for public speaking. Hey, I want to thank everyone who came out today. I want to thank Tony Exton very much, our media guy. I wanted to let everybody know that this ceremony was taped today, and in the not-too-distant future, it will be up on the Fairport District webpage if you feel like watching this again. And so you guys are welcome to kind of join us if you could for a group photo up front, and then everyone is invited to hang out, meet and greet, and then down by the auditorium, we got some food for everybody on a table down there, okay? Thank you so much for coming. Thank the students. You guys did a great job.